back to COVID. We haven't done a full COVID story for a while, but obviously there was some interesting announcements this week in terms of strategy and dealing with the pandemic here in Australia with, New South Wales effectively coming out of lockdown. They're going to take more steps when they get to 80% in a few days' time. We're recording this on a Saturday, and presumably it's going to be Monday when they take the next stage out of opening up. But then there was the announcement that they were going to just stop all hotel quarantine arrangements from the beginning of November, which effectively means that people can come back. Now, there was a bit of argy-bargy going on with, some might say grandstanding, saying, yeah, anyone can come in now, whereas, our PM sort of jumped in and said, no, hold your horses. It's not going to be open slather. It's just going to be, Australian citizens coming back that want to be able to come back that haven't been able to while the borders have been shut. And there's obviously some knock-on effects to this because, there was, I guess, a consensus at one point that the whole country had to get to 80% collectively before the borders reopened. And this is kind of, sort of not quite in line with that. And, presumably it could just open up a scenario where, people could just come in through Sydney and use that as the gateway into the rest of the country. Unless, and this is the part that, we're crystal balling here, who knows how the other states will react, what types of potential restrictions they'll put in place because of it and how they'll monitor it. We could potentially be in for a couple of months of really interesting times, shall we say, in terms of how all of this is managed and how we as a people react to with what we choose to do on a daily basis.
Well, it's very, very true. And I mean, I think if you look at it now, with the fact of coming out of COVID, probably New South Wales and Victoria have an advantage as in they have COVID in the community. Then you've got all the other states that don't have COVID in the community. So while I don't really understand what the point of yesterday's announcement from our friends in New South Wales was, except maybe to force an issue, and I don't really know, considering the Prime Minister hasn't been able to convince any of the states of anything before, I think him saying that's not going to happen doesn't necessarily mean it won't either. So I think you're absolutely right. We don't know what's going to happen. I think in New South Wales and Victoria, if you stop reporting the numbers, case numbers, and just, close your eyes and hope for the best, you probably will get to living with COVID much more quickly than a state that doesn't. And states that don't have COVID at all now will have to go through a very disruptive process, even if there are no official government lockdowns, state government lockdowns. I think that the process will still be very disruptive because I can't imagine anyone, just because we're not locked down, suddenly wanting to go to a workplace and where colleagues have got COVID or go to an event where you suspect someone might have COVID. So how that's going to play out is just like the politics, probably anyone's guess.
And that's, I guess, a standing feature of the entire pandemic, really. It's just been very unpredictable, and also the reactions to dealing with it have been unpredictable as well, because obviously there are, different states have had different views about doing different things at different times. Western Australia is always the fun one to talk about because, they put up the blast shield and, effectively lived life just fine for the past 18 months, more or less, and they're going to have to figure out a way to open up. But it may be that they come out last in terms of bringing the blast shield down, like their border, of course, that I'm referring to there. But then conversely, like in Victoria, where I am, and you've got 2,000 cases a day being reported, and there's no indication that the roadmap out is going to change at all. Like there's an expectation, either today, tomorrow, or Monday, or whatever, that they're just going to announce that the place is going to open up as scheduled. Actually, before schedule, they had an indicative date of the 26th of October, but it's starting to look like around the 21st now. When the state hits 70% double dose, and that'll be interesting to see how things will go. I heard an interesting remark on the news earlier today that suggested that Victoria's case numbers are high despite a strict lockdown, and that's kind of been pointed to being a non-compliance with the restrictions that's going on by members of the public, and that it might actually have a kind of a reverse psychology effect, that if they do open the place up, it might actually lead to cases going down because people haven't got that psychological kind of burden of having to deal with the restrictions anymore, which actually kind of curiously makes sense in a way.
I think it does make sense. As I say, you take the imposed government restrictions off, and then you put it down to personal responsibility. And who wants to go somewhere where you think you might catch COVID? I mean, that might change over 6 months as we get more used to living with COVID and probably catching it. I think the other thing that will happen as well is that, the push to test will probably drop off. But if you look at other places in the world, they're using rapid testing and they're self-isolating if they have COVID, trying not to spread it. So it's a very complicated situation. And I think for every nation around the world, getting to this point has been different. It's been a different set of circumstances. And so, I think Australia is a unique case, and probably New Zealand as well. And I really, I think to some extent it's probably been fortuitous that Melbourne and Sydney have had the Delta outbreaks. They've managed to keep them largely under control to this point, get the vaccination rates up. But as we've said, if you're in a state where there is no COVID, it's a big decision to open the borders.
Absolutely. I guess just lastly, I wanted to touch again on this whole concept of international travel becoming a thing again. And I think the thing that concerned me about the announcements from yesterday was this impression that was given that, we're going back to normal. We're all open up. It's all good. But it's still not going to be, even, best case scenario, it works. It's still not going to be that straightforward. And again, there's impediments in place. So obviously there are some people who want to do it, but there's still going to be things like taking a test before you board your flight. From wherever you're coming from. You'll probably have to test after you come back. I think that was the kind of broad sort of approach, and you have to show that you're negative, on those tests. There's still logistical hurdles that I think would prevent deter, I should say, a lot of people from actually doing it anyway. So unless you've got the scenario of I'm dying to get back to Australia because I've been overseas for the past 12 months and haven't been able to get back in, where it's a bit more of it's not a tourist reason, shall we say, or a flippant reason. You've got or you need to come back, to see family, or there's something a bit more, I don't want to say tourism isn't significant, but that's more for fun. If it's a more serious reason, you'd probably have more incentive to go through that entire rigmarole of all the testing and isolating and all of that. But I think that wasn't really made clear yesterday in terms of this. It's actually not going to be that much less of a hassle, and it still will likely be that we're still going to be another 12 to 18 months away from, even beyond that probably, before it resembles anything close to normal in terms of international travel.
Even when you're excited about going on a big overseas trip, until you're on the plane, the hours you spend at the airport before checking in and hanging around and that sort of thing is pretty crap. The fact that this is probably now going to extend to a 2-day process where you have to get tested 2 days before, paperwork, proof, check in, I'm sure on the flight, maybe you have to get there, 5 hours before and take a rapid test as well, just to make sure, get stood aside if the rapid test is a false positive. I can't imagine it's going to be pleasant.
And that's what I mean. I think that's kind of, the chill pill moment that I think everyone has to take, that, there's a feeling of we can't wait to get back to normal. But again, I think we've said this so many times, there's no normal coming anytime soon. It's going to be a slow process until it's kind of what it was. And even then, I don't think things will be what they used to be, at least not for many years yet.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, as you've summed it up, there won't be any. The days of just jumping on a plane quickly to go somewhere are gone.